Welcome back, everybody. Strap in. It's psychology talk. We got tons to discuss today. In addition to promoting the matriarchy, which is what this show is ultimately about, right? Well, in a way it is. I mean, in a way, we are the true promoters of the matriarchy and the patriarchy. Why does it have to be one or the other? I mean, that's the mischaracterization, or at least the misrepresentation. Same thing of the matriarchy is that it's just ruled by women and men have to do whatever women do. And there are societies like that, and they do fine in a sense. There's a lot of infanticide, and they don't really go anywhere. I looked for Southwest China for that. But the matriarchy was never really about that. And when people talk about the matriarchy now, we're not talking about the matriarchy. We're talking about putting women in male roles. Like making women the captain of industry, that's not the matriarchy. The matriarchy is an equal celebration. Equal, like one takes away from the other. It's the 100% celebration of both masculine characteristics and feminine characteristics. Being emotional, being caring, equality. These are all great feminine attributes that we need to listen to women to comprehend. Not listen to them, but decode what they're saying. It's like when your wife or girlfriend gets emotional, or any other woman for that matter, do you look at the surface of the emotion, what's going on, or do you read it? Do you decode it and interpret it from that respect? And that's what the matriarchy is about, is saying that emotionalism is just as important as any sort of logic or reason. In fact, without the emotion, without understanding emotions, where they come from, how they work, we can't have logic and reason. Reason just turns to rationalization unless we can understand where emotions come from and how they work. And that's the real matriarchy. In fact, often when mental illness has been represented in literature, well, not literature, but plays, in stories throughout history, it's either the character has too much patriarchy, too much masculinity, not enough femininity, or too much femininity, not enough masculinity. There's that famous stone engraving of the siren on top of the sailor, and the sailor's lying prostrate. Not prostate. He's lying prostrate. And the siren's on top of him, and he can't move. And this is, of course, a representation of a man who let his emotions take control of him. Right? He's all feminine. He's all the dark sides of femininity, the crazy irrational emotionalism, and not without the reason, right? Without the integration, without the perspective, without the conceptualization of what an emotion even is. And that looks like mental illness. And that would be a great way to represent it 2,000 years ago. So yeah, this is the matriarchy. I'm in full support of a matriarchy, if you mean by matriarchy the traditional, the view of what that is a reverence, deep reverence for femininity and what that brings to our lives. And nothing would matter without that. We couldn't relate with each other. We couldn't get along. We couldn't regulate. We couldn't build relationships without that presence in our life. But without the masculine presence, you wouldn't do anything with it anyways. You wouldn't build skyscrapers. You wouldn't cure diseases. You wouldn't run large industries that are the backbone of a civilization. By civilization, to the extent to which we recognize and respect the individual. But yeah, this whole futurist female thing, that's not a matriarchy. That is just as much a patriarchy as, whatever your worst conception of a patriarchy could be. My wife and I were just watching Homer Badman. Great episode. Obviously super prescient now, given the whole Me Too thing. But the way that that Dennis Franz was portraying Homer Simpson in that made-for-TV movie of what you think, like nobody cares if I sexually harass you, with the man in the White House, like just your worst, darkest projection of the patriarchy. Now, feminists, I'm talking to you. You think that's going to change just because you're going to make women as CEOs? No, it's exactly the same. In fact, it's worse because now you have, it's the same roles filled, just with people who cannot fill those roles. You can't have a stay-at-home dad Like, he can do it in a sense, but he's not going to be as happy, and he's always going to be in conflict with himself. I mean, I could work at a, what's it called? Nursing school? A daycare. A nursery. I could do it. It'd be fine. You know, and especially if all of society was telling me, oh, Mark, you're so much more noble for working at a nursery, for working at a daycare. It would make it a little bit easier, sure. But is that really what's going on? I mean, is that really what I need to do? I don't know. I think the matriarchy is a powerful concept. I think we need to get more in touch with the matriarchy. But as we're doing it now, that this is, it's not it. Yeah, until we can have a Harry Potter series where the heroes are not in Gryffindor, they're in Hufflepuff, that's the matriarchy. Until that, anything you're talking about matriarchy is just a patriarchy filled by women. That's all it is. You know, speaking of matriarchy, okay, maybe there is something close to a matriarchy going on over at New York City. Bill de Blasio, perhaps, I don't know if he's one of the most effeminate men you'll ever meet. I've never really heard him talk so much, but just his policies, his views on everything. Oh man, talk about running a city into the ground. You know, it's like when you break up with a girl and 2 months later you find out that she's like stalking you on Facebook, or she like used some encryption tool. I don't know what that is, but she figured out your Facebook password, and she's going through your account, seeing who you're talking to. You're like, oh God, like whatever doubt I had about breaking up with, it's just totally done away with. It was, yeah, my breaking up with her was totally confirmed. We just moved from New York City in July, and now they're closing Rikers Prison, 10,000 beds, 7,000 inmates, and by 2026 they're gonna build 4 new jails, each with 886 beds. Sorry, just doing some research here. Don't mind me. Just having facts here on Animus there. 886 beds times 4, so that's about 3,500. So they're going to put 3,500 more inmates out on the street. And I got to talk about this. I mean, this is a mental health issue. This is a relational issue. I mean, you know, my big, what's it called? Trigger points. Hot button issues for me. One of my hot button issues is mental health care, how we treat the mentally ill, deinstitutionalization, taking people out of prisons, putting them on the streets, putting them in homeless shelters and thinking, oh, well, what's the big deal? We're just going to put you in this homeless shelter and you're naturally going to go and get mental health treatment. You know, for how much a lot of the criticism of not understanding mental health, and I do think that America, Western civilization has done a lot. Individualism is super important, totally crucial for building a civilization to the extent to which we recognize and respect the individual as a being unto himself. But there's some things that we're still coming to grips with. I don't think it's just Western civilization. I think we're just more in touch with our blind spots. But every culture, every civilization has their own blind spots when it comes to mental illness. We're figuring it out, right? Psychology is a new field, 150 years old. There's still not even a science for what psychology is, but of course that's what we talk about here. But man, so people on the right, I think, tend to be criticized for not understanding mental illness, and I think there's some truth to that. I don't think people on the right do understand it. Oh, just, you know, this is very much the top-down, oh, if you have a difficult time getting work done, well, just make yourself be more disciplined. You know, just make yourself focus. A difficult time focusing, well, just make yourself focus, right? Very Jocko Willink. Just take responsibility. Jordan Peterson. Yeah, focus, discipline, responsibility. These are all great things, but you don't understand how psychology works if you think just telling somebody to take responsibility and even demonstrating to them how important it is. Like, that's not understanding psychology. That's understanding philosophy, but not psychology. But people on the left have the same issue too, because they think that they can just take people out of prison, nonviolent drug offenders, right? People, I don't think they need to be in prison anyways. But you can't just take them out of prison and put them on the street, give them an apartment even, which they do in New York City, and then expect them to show up at the community center 3 days a week for their medication and their group therapy. That's not how it happens. I was mentioning a little bit before we left New York how the homeless problem was getting worse and worse. And the things I saw in Verity Square on 73rd Street and Broadway and just that whole block, it was absolutely awful. I mean, it's turning into San Francisco. It's not as bad as San Francisco. We were just in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and that's bad. Yeah, that's one of those things. The news reports are not making it out to be worse than it is for some sort of publicity, clickbait kind of thing. It is that bad. It smells like tinkle. It smells like homeless man tinkle, which is definitely worse. So they're taking 3,500 people out of prison and putting them where? Doing nothing with them. Even though I totally agree with the idea of taking especially nonviolent drug offenders out of prison. They need to be in a mental institution, not out on the street fending for themselves. That indicates you don't understand mental health just as much, if not more, as whatever the worst projection of your right-wing Trump supporter, oh, just suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps view of mental illness. These are both broken. And this is going to be absolutely terrible. You know what it is? It's like universal basic income. That was originally a libertarian idea. That was a libertarian idea. I know, a government program, libertarian idea. That was a libertarian small government solution to the welfare issue. Because right now, welfare is broken. It doesn't work. It incentivizes you to be on welfare. So people, not everybody, but people will lie and people will use the system that is, at least perceptually, at least in the short term, has limitless funds, which is true. In the short term, the system does have limitless funds, especially when you print money. Now, obviously, it's not a long-term solution, but UBI was the solution to that. So it was taking away the welfare system, everything, housing, food stamps, everything, and replacing it with UBI. And that's what a mental health revolution would look like in America. It's taking away the prisons and how we treat prisoners now, who are mostly nonviolent drug offenders, and even the ones who do commit violent crimes, mental health issues. You don't put them in a cage. But what do you replace it with? A community center? That's not how it works. Man. I don't know. It's just like this total disconnect in understanding mental health. Yeah, those people are not to blame, especially if they have serious mental health issues. And I mean, what are the statistics? It's like 85% of the people in prison do, or at least female in prison. But it's ultimately 100% of people in prison have mental health issues. I'm not saying, obviously they need to be removed from society, but just keeping them in prison, especially the way that we do it now, it's broken. But just closing Rikers isn't going to do it. Man, I mean, deeper issues need to be solved. I mean, it's very similar, again, to talking with girls. Like, oh, I have girl problems. I have a difficult time connecting with girls. And, oh, there's this girl in my math class, so I can't, I have a crush on her, but I can't ask her out. Yeah, the issue isn't the girl, usually. The issue is usually the separation from the parents. And then the insights that you get from separating from your parents. Then asking out the girl, it becomes much easier. I mean, you're always going to be afraid of girls. I sure as heck still am. But it's a lot easier and it's way more manageable. And you can get yourself to the place where, okay, I'm kind of anxious about this, but what am I going to do? Not ask her out? It's the same kind of thing. Like, there's a deeper issue here than simply closing Rikers. I know that makes us feel good, and I guess this gets us into maybe the real motivation, the ultimate psychological motivation for de Blasio and the city council closing Rikers. It feels good. It fits with their ideology. And in these articles, I mean, the quotations from the councilmen, the council members, the council people, and de Blasio himself. He's like, look, we have a broken prison system, too many black and brown people, especially in prison. So just closing Rikers, just talking to the girls, going to fix the resentment with the father. Just adding adding universal basic income to a broken system is going to fix the broken system. It's not. You have to get rid of it. You have to first understand it, why it's broken, why UBI was introduced in the first place, and then you finally have a chance of solving it. It's about understanding the context for these things, not just, oh, close Rikers, prison bad. Yeah, I believe you. That's my number one. Well, no, I think my number one hot button issue is the foreign policy war thing. Being the world's peacekeeper. That's my number one. I mean, just because that wastes the most money. And it kills a lot of people. And I think we're all still traumatized by all the wars throughout the 20th century. Like, I mean, you can't even begin talking about mental health in this country until you begin talking about World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. So much. I mean, really, when you start to look at it, so much. And we're definitely doing better as opposed to the 19th or 18th century, but just so much trauma there that we just have a difficult time, seeing reality. I mean, you see it now. Whenever anybody makes even a peep of people not even equal, just not the same because of their race or ethnicity, like you can't even hear it. We can't even talk about that, even though before World War II, it was very open for debate. And obviously it should be open for debate. But we're just but that's just one example. I mean, there's way more concrete examples. But what do you do? I mean, just in your own life, whenever something's not working out, what do you do? What do you start talking about? What do you start thinking about is, well, what's the payoff? Right? And what's the payoff of this clearly bad policy of closing Rikers? Putting 3,500 more people, not that they need to be in prison, but they need to be taken care of somehow. And if you think they're just going to take care of themselves, if you think that you're just going to give them Thorazine and they're going to take care of themselves, or the equivalent, then again, you understand mental illness about as well, probably worse than the just pull yourself up by your bootstraps guy. So what's the payoff? The payoff is this is your ideology. In a sense, I mean, the more literal payoff here is de Blasio is probably going to get some sweet contracts for his developer friends because they're going to build 4 more prisons. I don't know what they're going to do to Rikers. Maybe turn it into some Alcatraz tourist attraction. But they're going to build 4 more prisons. I think 1 in Manhattan. Yeah, 1 in each of the 4 boroughs except for Staten Island. So, I mean, that's maybe the literal payoff. But the emotional payoff is we're doing good. I'm such a great guy. Oh, look at all these people. Look at all these non-violent offenders who are in prison. I'm releasing them out in the world. The prison system is corrupt. There are a lot of problems. And you're right. There are a lot of problems with the prison system. It doesn't need to be thrown out, though. It needs to be reformed. Just essentially turn prisons into mental hospitals. Yeah. Look at what a great person I am. Look at these great strides we're making towards progress. Right? Like, you just see it all the time, and this isn't just about politics. Obviously, this is about us. I don't know, like, let's say your neighbors are playing really loud music, and instead of saying something to them, what do? Oh, you complain to your wife about it, you complain to your kids, but ultimately I think what you do is you are self-righteous, right? You make yourself righteous you think of yourself as somebody better than those loud neighbors playing music because you would never play music that loud at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Oh, who are they? I would never do something like that. I'm the good person. And you think you're the good person, but really what you're doing is that's your payoff for not actually going there and saying, hey, could you guys turn the music down? It's a little bit late. We're trying to get to bed. Which, when you actually do that in 99.9% of circumstances, they go, oh, really? Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, we'll be happy to turn it. No problem. You're going for the payoff of feeling self-righteous, just like de Blasio and the council members are. And that's really why you're doing it. It's not because you're a good person. You just like to tell yourself that you're a good person. And this is the basis of, well, it's not the 100% basis of every ideology, but this is at least a part of it. And then you get what? Ideas. Well, that's what an ideology is, right? It's an idea disconnected from reality. Ideas are great, but when they become disconnected from the reality, and then there becomes an emotional justification for them, usually self-righteousness, like de Blasio, like the council members, like you not going over and telling the neighbors could you just turn it down a little? And honestly, that's all it takes. I was wondering if you could turn it down a little. But no, you want to get self-righteous. And then you want to create your own ideology, much like the SJW kind of de Blasio, New York City ideology of, oh, there's too many people in prison, without really understanding the cause of the problem. So you create your own ideology. Yeah, you create your own ideology about people are stupid and they don't understand. And, it's not worth communicating to people anyway. That's your own false ideology. Yeah, nothing says false ideology like, well, there's managerial problems with Rikers. We didn't like how it was run. There's one really bad case where this guy was waiting 3 years for trial and he ended up committing suicide. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I agree. But there's clearly an ideology problem when you go from there to, let's close down Rikers. Let's just put these people out on the street. And again, I don't think I am the most liberal pusswad when it comes to this stuff. You don't need to be in prison. That's ridiculous. You need to be in treatment. Criminal record is ridiculous. I mean, there's trauma there that we can really treat. And I think in a lot of situations we can't. In some, you can't really do anything about it. But I'm with you, de Blasio. When it comes to being a liberal pusswad, I am right with you on this, but you don't understand the issue. You're not smart enough to get it. Just calling yourself a good guy for the sake of feeling self-righteous, you're going to put 3,500 people out on the street, and nothing says ideology like, oh, there's managerial problems, well, let's just close it down. Not, how could we run this better? And maybe this is a failure of the psychology community as well, because too many of us, we don't understand this. I mean, everybody, go to those luncheons where there's hors d'oeuvres. I can't really pronounce it. Hors d'oeuvres and tweed jackets, and everybody's going around. Oh, the mental health. Oh, there's too many people. And yeah, but you can't. What's your solution? Do you even know what mental illness is in the first place? Well, until you can come up with a conception for it, and to the extent that it really affects people, that it really disconnects them from reality, you're just gonna set them up in a prison in North Manhattan, in Inwood, which is kind of the Inglewood of Manhattan, in Inwood. And they're not gonna, they're gonna be defecating on the street 6 weeks later. That's exactly what happened in San Francisco and throughout the entire West Coast, to be honest. But it kind of congregates in San Francisco for, certain incentive reasons. God. Absolutely terrible. But, again, it just comes down to the secondary emotional payoff. When you're really making bad decisions, and this isn't just, again, not just for de Blasio or the city council, when you're making bad decisions, what's your payoff? Where do you get stuck? We talked about this with cognitive dissonance, right? No, last week with reason versus an excuse. What's the difference? Reason leaves you open to more possibilities. What could I do? I'm working on this. I'm managing this issue. I'm not where I need to be yet. Right? But excuses, shut down. That's one kind of payoff. But another kind of payoff that we really need to be, careful of, and it's very similar with the shut down, tune out, isolate kind of payoff is self-righteousness. But I'm right. Your ideology is not working out, but I'm right. But there is a prison problem, but I'm right. Well, there's a public defecation problem. Oh, but I'm right. right? What's the payoff? What are you really going for? What's the real motivation for your actions? Something in your life is not working out. Just look at this de Blasio closing down Rikers thing. You can just map your issue, I can almost guarantee, right on this situation, right on this closing down Rikers, because there's managerial problems. Right down on this, that jails aren't working out, let's just close all the jails. It's exactly what happened with deinstitutionalization in this country. Were there serious reports of abuse? Were they not handled correctly? Of course there were problems with mental health institutions in the early 20th century and 19th century. Do you just close them down? Or do you fix the issue? We just want to disengage, disconnect. And I see this a lot too, with people breaking up. I mean, not that you shouldn't break up. And if your wife or your girlfriend is in a good situation, I mean, one of the best things that you can do for your life is to break up with her, is to get divorced. It's not easy, but when you really look at the issue for what it is and you see it as it's not going anywhere, I think it takes a lot of bravery to break up or get divorced. It's fine, but that's not how people do it. Usually when people break up or get divorced, it's just a gradual disconnection over many months or perhaps many years. No attempt to engage, very little attempt to make the relationship healthier. They don't even know what that looks like. Similar to Blasio mental illness, you don't even know what it is. No attempt to engage, no attempt to reach out. Just gradual disconnection, coming up with more and more just little implicit excuses to break up and disconnect. And then you break up and disconnect and you're like, well, then it feels unfulfilling. Then it doesn't feel like the right thing. Yeah, because the challenge was to engage with the, quote, problem, the wife or girlfriend, more. And then from that plane, from that echelon of awareness and regulation, then you're in a much better position to decide whether to break up with her. Man, you just gotta... I don't know what to say about this. I mean, obviously, I'm really upset about it, but this is what we all do. We all do. Yeah, crime's down in New York. Violent crime's down. What about public defecation crime? What about people yelling at you at Verity Square, 73rd Street and Broadway, at 9:30 on a weekday? What? Man. How do you think cities collapse? Does it just happen all at once, or is it just a gradual, things aren't working out, people are going to leave? I mean, and everybody I knew in New York, everybody, people who tend to have their life together, they're either planning on leaving, they've left, and it's always for the same reason. And it's this reason. It's the Bill de Blasio doing the right thing for the self-righteousness payoff reason. Yeah. Well, that took a lot of time. I had something else to talk about. Just about the importance of play. And, it's just one of these things that, and I just get this question of, I have this anxiety issue, like I'm clearly avoiding this situation with my mom, let's say, or my dad, or, maybe even the asking girls out thing. I don't think I've gotten this question, but I think guys would be thinking, or I think I've thought about this too, especially bringing things up to your wife or asking a girl out. When I talk about managing anxiety, so often it's easy to just see one situation of managing anxiety. Okay, I can admit to myself that I don't want to bring up this one issue, or I don't want to ask out this one girl. But, it's probably not going to work out anyways, and it doesn't matter that much. So, what's really the big deal? It doesn't fit maybe the overall plan of my life, right? So why would I even do these things? Why would I... Maybe make yourself study vocab. I'm trying to come up with examples here. Probably should have done this before I started the show. So what's really the point of managing the anxiety? And it's just really important, or confronting this one particular issue. This one particular issue isn't the real cause of my anxiety, right? It's probably not about bringing up this one thing to my wife or asking out this one girl, and the downside, this huge negative, or like skydiving, right? Like, oh, I'd be really afraid of skydiving or ledges. But yeah, the ledges is a good one. I want to go on this hike, but maybe there's pathways where there's a ledge. I went to read the reviews on Yelp or something. So I want to avoid that. But that's okay, because I don't have to walk near ledges. This is a better example. I don't have to walk near ledges to live a good life. Because ultimately my life doesn't come down to walking near ledges. It comes down to building relationships, making money, doing something that I think is valuable, and probably even more important than that, meaningful. So what's the point of this one thing? And I think it's the same excuse that parents come to, especially in more Swipple, upper middle class areas, I guess where we live now, of like play. Of roughhousing and play, is their children. They don't want their children to play. They don't want them to engage in any rough and tumble behavior. As soon as somebody screams, oh, I got to get involved and I got to break it up, and I have to be the one that manages it. But the more we learn about mental health, this was the CBT delusion, is that the fear about the spider was just about the spider. And so often our issues generalize out to other areas. You are not in control. Like you do not have the correct perspective to judge whether your anxiety problem is really about walking near those ledges on that one hike that you're afraid to go on. You're in no place to judge whether your anxiety is really about asking out that one girl, or saying that one thing to your wife, or confronting your boss about that one issue. You don't know. You don't have enough perspective. And just like kids in plane, the more we find out about kids in plane, this is nothing new. Coddling of the American mind argument. Kids need to play for their psychological development. But I don't want my kid to play, right? What I really want him to do is live a happy life, is find somebody he cares about, and find something that he likes to do, find meaning and happiness. It's not about play. Right? That's just this small thing you do over here in childhood, and it's kind of silly, and it has no real immediate benefit, from my perspective, from my anxious parenting perspective. So let's just not have play. And this is just not how our psychology works. Managing our issues is so much bigger than just the issue. And this has been shown time and time again. When in exposure therapy, for instance, especially with spiders. You can make somebody be more confident around spiders. You can make somebody who's had fear of spiders, arachnophobia, for years. For years. You can have them hold a spider within a couple weeks, sometimes even less. Yet they still present with other symptoms of anxiety. They still have the insomnia. They still have the obsessive thoughts, the compulsive behaviors. They still have other avoidance things that they still, have the same dread thoughts when it comes to going to a social gathering. It's never about one situation. It's about a bunch of situations that contribute to one situation. It's not about one fear here. I just think, and maybe movies have popularized this, but it's like, oh, if you just get in one confrontation with one person, if you just face one person, one end boss, then all your issues are going to go away. And that's not it. That's not how it works. The fear of the ledge is connected with the fear of confronting your wife, the fear of asking out the girl, the fear of spiders, the insomnia, the, obsessively organizing the drawer in the kitchen whenever you have something serious to do with work. It's all connected. And we're finding this more and more. It's just all a microcosm of the play thing. No, the children need to play, especially in an unsupervised setting, where if one person's going too far, the other child needs to communicate. You can't have a parent come in. That is essential to their brain development so they can go out and do all the things that you would want them to do. But it applies just as easily to adults. Like your life goals don't involve walking close to an edge, going on a hike where there's a ledge and you can potentially fall and, seriously damage or maybe even kill yourself, right? You want to start some charity and do something, but you have to see how that is related. Managing your issues around that ledge are going to make it that much easier to manage your life or to manage your issues whenever it comes to building a business or especially building a relationship. Like if you can't do that, if you can't do the ledge thing or to ask out this one girl, even though, maybe it's, she's not going to be your wife. You don't know that, but she probably isn't going to be. Like it's just all these things are connected. And the more information that comes in on CBT, and just simple exposure therapy about one particular instance, which I think is fine. I think it's fine to do, but if you don't understand the context for that, of managing your issues in general, then you're never going to manage your issues. You're going to get caught in this incessant busyness of just looking at, the small things without paying attention to the bigger issues. Like to go back to the asking out the girl, right? The issue with that goes back to the parents. Oh, I don't really care about having a relationship with my parents. What's the big deal there? What I really need is a girlfriend. But you can't have one without the other. You can't compartmentalize these things. And really, until you manage the issue with the parents, you really aren't going to know how it truly affected the issue asking out the girl after math class. Same thing with going on the hike close to the ledge. You're not going to know how that really affected you until you actually manage that fear, until you actually walk close to an edge and allow yourself to become comfortable with that process, I guess it goes back to the thing I was talking about before with focus. You have a problem with focus, and all you do is you go on YouTube, you read books, and everybody is just yelling at you to have focus, talking about the importance of it, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much how you communicate with your dad and your mom, that contributes to the focus. How you walk next to that ledge on that hike, that contributes to the focus. Not only whether you ask out the girl in math class, but how you do it, that contributes to the focus. We really need to start seeing our psychology as this holistic approach, which establishment psychology has gotten away from, mostly because it's been taken over. The whole viewing your psychology as holistic, that's been taken over by the Sedona crowd and, the whole healing crystals thing. But that's true, not in that way, but that's exactly what's going on. And I think that's really the importance, or one of the main importances of group therapy is, it's difficult. Like I don't know how to say this, but when we go to therapy, we just want a solution. We want, I have a difficult time reaching my goals. Let's say that. That's what I was really going to talk about today, but there just wasn't enough time. I went too off on that New York City thing. But I want to achieve my goals. I want to make a certain amount of money. I want to have sex with so many girls. I want to get a girlfriend. These very specific things. Let's just talk about that. And that's not how it works. We'd like to think that's how it worked. Right? You have a difficult time reaching your goal. Okay, well, let's just come up with a better plan for a goal. It's not about that, right? It's about your emotions. Your decisions come from your emotions. So it's really a question of how do you manage your emotions? And to do that, we need to talk about a bunch of different things and see how the experience of talking with your dad, of walking next to the ledge, of asking out the girl, how it's all connected in a sense by the same emotion. Now you manage that emotion, anxiety, and things will just start to work out better. That's the idea. That's the idea behind unifying a field of any field, but especially the field of psychology is, okay, Now we boiled this field down to a few key parts. Let's just work on those parts in as many different ways as we can. Work on the anxiety by asking out the girl, by talking with your dad, walking by the ledge, going skydiving. I know, your goal isn't to go skydiving, but that matters. Because how you face that is going to inform how you face the girl, how you face the ledge, how you face your father, how you make money, how you are in a negotiation. It's all the same. You know, when it comes to confronting anxiety, it all feels the same. It all feels like you're going to die to varying degree. It's just about becoming comfortable with that. It's very similar with losing weight. Like at a certain point when it comes to losing weight, you just got to understand that hunger is going to be a part of it. But it's not the hunger, right? It's your reaction to the hunger. It's how you act in the face of the hunger. That's what matters. And it's when the hunger happens, that's when other issues start to come up. That's when other excuses start to come up. And that's when you eat stupid crap to avoid those issues. And that's when you get fat. Same thing with managing anxiety. When you get to a really tense point of asking out this girl, other issues come up. Now it presents as rationalizations, as excuses, right? As, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I don't really like girls with hair like that, maybe, so I'm not gonna, we're probably not gonna go that far. It's about working on yourself. Now, you know, I spent so much time, so much of my 20s talking to girls. Cold approaching, cold calling, as we call it back in the day, girls. Just getting more comfortable with that, and it helped. It totally helped a lot. More comfortable with girls. I found out who I was around girls. I learned a lot about myself in that process. You learn a lot about yourself when you go up and you talk to a strange woman and ask her out on a date and, you know, get her phone number, you know, text, call her. You learn a lot about yourself. But man, when I started going to group in 2013, like, I don't think how many girls have I talked to? How many freaking first dates have I been on? You can't even begin to count that. But I don't think I was truly, like, really comfortable with the girl. And it's strange to say that because, you know, when I was 26, I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally fine. Yeah, first date, no anxiety whatsoever. But I don't think I was truly confident sitting across from a girl over a drink or a coffee until I started going to group. Now, we never talked about girls in group, almost never, right? It barely came up. Nobody was talking about talking to girls or how do you ask her out or texting or what's a good thing to talk about on a first date. It was never about that. It was about, here's where I'm insecure about some completely unrelated topic. Here's how I've managed it, or here's how I'm learning to manage it. Even if I can't manage it, here's how I'm kind of working on it now, or here's my perspective at the very least about it now. Here's how I feel about it now. And then I go meet out the girl for a drink on that Sunday, and it's just to the core, calm and relaxed, totally myself. I couldn't believe it. Absolutely amazing. And until you really experience that, it's I don't know, that there's really just no words. I mean, in a sense, not to get too gay about it, but in a sense, that's the spiritual experience. That connection. That being comfortable. Other people seeing you seeing other people and talking about it, man. That's everything. That's everything. That's the ledge, that's your dad, that's the girl, that's skydiving, that is everything. And that is ultimately, if you get issue 2 of the magazine, that's why we do everything. It makes the most sense. It's why we even have brains as large as they are in the first place. But yeah, get issue 2 of the magazine for that. If you want that spiritual experience, if you want to really start managing your emotions, if you're freaking tired of these freaking Jordan Petersons and Jocko Willing yelling at you, discipline, responsibility, which again, I think are great, but what does that even mean? How do you get to that point? AnimusEmpire.com, individual therapy, group therapy. If you're still not convinced, read the book, buy the magazines, or just keep listening to the podcast, reading my articles. Happy to communicate with you guys any way you can, any way that I can. Got lots more to talk about here. Barely touched on it this week, but we'll leave it there. Animus at animusempire.com. I know I haven't been doing the Q&A videos. I've been just saying that every week. Man, I'm in the process of figuring out how to fit that in with everything else. I can do it. I just got to figure out a system. Once I get the system down, then there's going to be way too many Q&A videos and you guys aren't going to be watching them all. That's okay. I'd rather have that than too few. But again, Animus at animusempire.com. Thank you guys so much. And as always, I wish you all the pain and joy that comes from being in touch with reality.